Welcome to the Focolare Word of Life podcast for August 2024. My name is Nick Chamforani and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we'll be listening to experiences that relate to this month's Word of Life, which says, Lord, it is good for us to be here, taken from Matthew chapter 17, verse 4. But before we begin with the stories, I'd like to ask Tom Rowley to share a short introduction.
Just imagine being in the place of Peter, who witnessed the transfiguration of Jesus on that mountaintop. It is easy to understand why Peter would say, Lord, it is good for us to be here. It's certainly conceivable that we would feel the same. However, Jesus knows the importance of the call that we all must follow him and imitate him. In that call, we are to share the joy we have, proclaim the good news that God is love, and to love the neighbor who is in front of us in any present moment.
Hey, Paul, welcome to our podcast. It's really good having you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm feeling peachy being here in Atlanta.
Well, we're so glad you could make it, and I hope you enjoy your visit here in Atlanta. Paul, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. I live in Harlem, in New York. I'm one of 7 children, and I'm a network engineer by profession, and I live in the Focolare community.
Taking advantage of your visit here in Atlanta, Paul, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your experience in your workplace, which I thought relates well to this month's Word of Life, and that is experiencing the presence and action of God. Can you share that with us now?
Sure. As you know, I started a company about 14 years ago. It's a technical company. And by the Lord's grace, it's been a great experience. We've always had plenty of work, and with this company, I was able to provide jobs for people, and it's been very meaningful experiences of giving people jobs and working together on a project together. However, starting like last December, I noticed that we started not be able to get new jobs or new jobs, enough jobs for everyone. And so this was something different and something a challenging experience to not being able to provide work for your staff. And so at that moment when I was praying, I says, God, this is something good for the people, right? For the jobs, but to realize that beyond it all, it is God that I need to focus on. That is the ultimate good. And so we talked with my staff. We talked about the current situation. But after 4 months, we still were having problems in finding new jobs. So it's an ongoing experience to say that our God, our Father, will provide, and see where this leads us to. And last month, I started talking to the staff and the employees to tell them that by next month we may start laying off people. And you could imagine how challenging and how difficult that was to tell the people you work with, we've almost like being a family, and to say that we don't know what the future holds. But in that moment, I remember one moment when I was going to talk to one of my employees. It was a heartfelt prayer that morning at Mass to tell God, He will guide us, He will lead us. And so I had a lunch with this employee, and at the end of lunch, I told her that by the end of that month I would have to lay her off. And so it was courageous conversations that we have. Then she turned around and she asked me how I was feeling. And I told her my anxieties also, but also to say that we are in God's hands. Well, actually, she was the one that told me that. That she says, Paul, she told me, you have been like a father that's always been trying to provide to us, but this is something beyond your control, and that we have to really hand this over to God. And God, who is our most generous Father, will provide. And this is maybe something else will be different. She told me, fine, I'll look for another job, and maybe I'll find another job, or we don't know. But this is an experience of, again, trusting God's love and providence. So we are at that moment, we are at that place where we don't know what the future holds for us, but it is a constant experience that no matter the good times or the bad times, it is God, we're in God's hands, and that He will lead us wherever what is in our future. So that's a little bit of an experience of my work, and how even at work, precisely at work, that God continues to be our guide, or my guide.
Paul, thanks again for taking the time to be with us today.
My pleasure.
Before we continue with our next story, I'd like to invite you to consider making a donation to Focolare Media. Your donation will help us continue to produce inspiring podcasts. Visit our website, focolaremedia.com/donate, and specify that your donation is for the Word of Life podcast. Thank you in advance for your support. Welcome, Lucia. We are so glad you could join us on this podcast.
Well, thank you, Nick. I'm really happy to be here, and it's an honor to do so.
Yes, and I read your experience and I was very touched by the love. But before you share it, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
My name is Lucia, and together with my husband, Bob, I live in Watertown, just outside of Boston. And a fun note is that we have 2 one-year-old kittens that are very frisky.
That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great. Thanks for introducing yourself. We are now happy to listen to your experience, so go ahead.
Okay, so while my day job is being a graphic designer for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I have restarted a small hobby called a Boston Welcome. I had been asked in the past, and again just a few months ago, to help find housing for different friends or friends of friends who were coming to Boston. One such friend was moving from a rustic apartment in upstate New York, and I had to listen carefully to her needs and her preferences. I realized that sometimes my thinking might not be the best thing. Also, I can get excited about the apartment and all its features, and my friend at the same time is sorry to leave and is suffering, even though she felt she needed to move. I realized I had to step into their shoes and walk with them on this journey. This really helped the process go smoothly. Upon arrival, this friend was amazed at how beautiful and well kept the apartment was, complete with a beautiful view from her living room and her bedroom. She was so happy to be here. She really felt the love that was put into her new home, both from me and from the other local Focolare community members who helped unload her truck. What a strong sense of family and also joy that came from loving each other as Christ would. The gospel words, "Lord, it is good to be here," came to mind. At about the same time, my friends from the DC area asked me to find suitable housing for a young woman who received a scholarship for a 2 year master program in public administration. As this search evolved from one person coming and then actually two people coming, also this was a wonderful adventure and an honor. Another friend who needs to relocate to the Boston area to be closer to a family member who is sick. This also is a wonderful adventure. I get all excited about a property, and then my friend explains it's really not in her budget. So I remember that together with the presence of God in our midst, the right place that God has in mind will come out. Surely He has the perfect apartment in mind, also for this friend. Once I had become impetuous and wanted to solve the situation all in one go. This caused my friend to become concerned. I was moving much faster than she wanted the situation to go. Yet my friend is teaching me to be patient, to endure in God's good time, and we both apologized. Now we were at peace, mutual love, the presence of Jesus among us was alive again. Lord, it is good for us to be here. A fruit, besides all these positive relationships, is that the woman who manages one of the apartments which we found was touched when I shared with her about this mini project, A Boston Welcome, and that I don't charge for it. She in turn revealed to me that besides managing that property, she is a realtor, and she shared some properties with me. She offered to share her commission if a placement were made. So the love that I had put into this work was becoming mutual. What joy we both had in our hearts. Lord, it is good for us to be here.
Thank you again, Lucia, for joining us and sharing your lovely
Thank
experiences.
you for having me.
Welcome, Mariela. It is so good to have you in our podcast.
Thank you, Nick. It's great to be here today.
Mariela, tell us where you are and where you're from. I know you're in a special place for a special event, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm here in Brazil for GenFest, which is happening in a few days. I'm originally from Brazil. I live in Canada for university. I just graduated and I came back for this experience happening throughout the month of July.
Well, listen, we'll be praying for that special experience so that many young people will be touched and make a wonderful experience. So, but now we're really happy to hear your story, your experience that you had recently. So go ahead, the mic is yours.
Thank you. And this experience happened very recently. It happened in the month of May. So because I live in Toronto, I was invited to share my testimony, my personal testimony at this event called Magnificat in the chapter in Toronto. And I shared my testimony and I mentioned how something that happened recently were the floods in the south of Brazil. That's where my family lives, in Rio Grande do Sul. And I just mentioned that in my testimony. And after the event happened, Antoinette, who is the organizer, gave me a little thank you note for accepting the invitation to share my testimony. And in that thank you note, I found a check for 100 Canadian dollars. And I was really taken aback because when we had first agreed for my participation back in January of this year, I signed the papers and it said like no stipend, no paid participation. So I was really taken aback. And I remember I told my mom And my mom told me, well, you know, we can donate that money for the emergency relief back home. And as much as I'm embarrassed to say, my first reaction was no, like I earned that money myself. But after talking to my mom, she told me, you know, like, this is providence. Like, you weren't expecting this money. You don't really need this money. And people back home need it. And just take a moment to think about that and how you can help. And I was really touched by that because ever since I came to Toronto, I've always been wanting to find a way to give back to my people and to the place I'm from. And especially in this very trying time that hundreds were displaced, hundreds of thousands were displaced, hundreds died. And it really moved my heart when it happened. And so when my mom nudged me in that way again, I was like, you know, you're right. I'm just going to let her know that the money that she gave me, I'm going to direct it to that cause. And Antoinette replied immediately and said, that's very touching, that's very inspiring, and we'd like to also waive the cost of your testimony to that cause. And so just a little context, Magnificat always records the testimony. So I received the audio recording. And so I started telling my friends, and a lot of my friends who weren't able to attend. The event had over 120 women, and it was only for women. So it was an opportunity to also share the testimony with other male friends who couldn't attend. And it was a really like snowball of an experience. I was able to fundraise in total 285 Canadian dollars. And just recently, we sent the money through the Focolare's emergency relief fund. And it was a really touching experience because the Word of Life precisely talks about how when we're gathered, we really feel enlightened by God's presence and we really feel encouraged by that. And that was really what Magnificat was for me and for a lot of people who attended. But after that, we have to come back into reality and start serving and start sharing that light with other people. And so I saw this opportunity as a moment God entrusted to me to start spreading that same joy that I felt, especially in a time where it's really hard for people back home to have hope and have joy in their day-to-day life. And so, yeah, that's just my experience and it's ongoing. I still receive some money. More people have been asking and been really also happy to see that there are like bits of hope in this very challenging time.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really a joy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless you, everyone.
So thank you for joining us today. I hope you have been inspired by the wonderful stories shared. I look forward to being with you again next month. To listen to a reflection and a commentary on the Word of Life, log on to your favorite podcast platform and look for the Focolare Word of Life podcast. There you will be able to listen to previous episodes. I invite you to join me each month for new episodes. You can also read additional experiences in Living City magazine. Bye for now, and God bless.